When James Rodriguez catapulted himself from star to superstar in the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil by winning the Golden Boot with 6 goals as a midfielder, the expectation surrounding the Colombian was a long career filled with several team and individual accolades, along with the undeniable status of being one of the greatest players of his generation. However, in the space of 8 years, his career has since taken a drastic turn for the worse. The player who was once considered hot property, tailor-made for only the biggest clubs in the world, now finds himself currently playing at Greek club Olympiacos. He went from being a 90 million Galacticos signing to now a representation of one of the biggest wastes of money in football history.
He's such a gifted player, James Rodriguez, such a delight to watch.
The downfall of James Rodriguez comprised of factors that were both in and out of his control. He suffered constant injuries, got into feud with the majority of his managers, thereby raising questions about his attitude, reportedly getting into a fight with one of his teammates, and finally, the reason that kick-started his decline in the first place. Due to the constant tactical evolution of football, players like James are no longer required by a majority of teams currently playing at the highest level.
Bit incredible to have a Premier League player who doesn't even know who his team are playing.
This is the ill-fated decline of James Rodriguez. When James Rodriguez catapulted himself to a completely different level in the 2014 World Cup in one of the greatest breakout performances in World Cup history, many clubs wanted to sign him. Real Madrid eventually beat everyone to it as they were made to pay a transfer fee of over 90 million euros. As expected, there was a lot of hype surrounding this transfer as yet another South American player was set to grace the iconic Santiago Bernabeu with his talents, and as for James, this was a dream come true. The numbers mean nothing to me. I just want to help make history and bring joy to Madrid fans. This is a club which is used to winning and I'm prepared mentally and physically to do so. It is a pleasure to be among so many stars and I'm sure I will learn a lot from everyone. I've always followed Real Madrid and always dreamed of playing here. I've suffered a lot to get here, and when you do that, then it tastes so much better. I will never forget this day. I hope to work hard, to train well, and to experience a lot of joy here. I know I am under a lot of pressure, but I am happy to face it. His signing was a statement of intent from club president Florentino Perez that despite recently winning La Decima, Real Madrid were setting their eyes on even more European dominance. At the time, they boasted talents such as Toni Kroos, who arrived the same summer as James, Gareth Bale, a world record signing at the time, Isco, Karim Benzema, and finally the man who needs no introduction, Cristiano Ronaldo. James had an explosive first season at the club as despite being out for 2 months, he scored a staggering 17 goals and registered 18 assists in 46 matches in all competitions. But unfortunately, due to Real Madrid's failure to win a trophy, Carlo Ancelotti was sacked and was subsequently replaced by Rafael Benitez. This appointment will kickstart the decline of James Rodriguez. One of the major highlights of Benitez's very short stint at Real Madrid was his feud with James. From Benitez's side, it was reported at the time that the Spaniard was unhappy when James turned into preseason overweight, and from James' side, he reportedly felt Benitez was shown favoritism towards Gareth Bale, which is not actually far-fetched due to the fact that that's exactly the reason why Florentino Perez brought him into the club in the first place. One of the more notable incidents happened in the early part of the 2015-16 season. James suffered an injury which took him out for over 2 months, and despite his recovery, he barely featured. After Real Madrid's 3-2 defeat to Sevilla, Benitez said this: "You saw what James is, very good quality, but he lacks the rhythm and form right now," implying that James wasn't featuring due to his fitness issues, to which the Colombian snapped days later after he played a full 90 minutes while on international duty with Colombia. "I'm ready for another 90 minutes. I'm training well for Real Madrid. I'm feeling fine. Keep saying that I'm not well. There was one play in which I ran 45 meters very hard and they say I'm not in good form." James wasn't the only one who saw reduced game time though. In fact, his direct competitor Isco was also receiving less game time, and this primarily had to do with the tactics Benitez introduced into the team, which required someone that was completely different from the pair, and that someone was Casemiro. When Benitez got sacked and replaced by Zinedine Zidane, people expected James to once again become a regular starter. However, that didn't even happen. Zidane, just like Benitez, preferred Casemiro, and whenever he needed an attacking midfielder, he often called upon Isco. This decision did not go down too well in the James camp, as his father on one occasion spoke out and criticized the Real Madrid boss for his decision. When Ancelotti was at Madrid, my son played very well. He played in his ideal position and was helping Modric. Now, he's been pushed to one side by Zidane, and I can't say my son is doing anything wrong because I know my son is a worker, is humble, and will play in whatever position the coach tells him to play in, regardless of whether it is his best position or not. Now, it is actually very easy to understand where everyone who was frustrated with his treatment were coming from, because his stats, 36 goals and 44 assists in 111 competitive appearances in his first 3 years at the club, did not necessarily indicate that he was performing poorly, but rather the fact that for some reason, he just wasn't fancied by a lot of his managers. As an attacking midfielder, James is brilliant when the team is on the ball, but when the team is not in possession, then the problem starts. Not known for his pressing and defensive prowess, the Colombian was often dropped for players who could do just that. So going back to his father's statements, his son may want to accept one of these roles so he could be playing regularly, but he's not the best in the team at any of these positions. He doesn't have enough pace to play as a winger compared to someone like Gareth Bale, and he's not a natural midfielder like the likes of Toni Kroos and Luka Modric. Injuries also didn't help his case. He was notorious for picking up injuries at many stages in the season, and due to this, he just didn't provide a much reliable long-term option for his managers, and this became so synonymous to his career that whenever anyone wanted to take a jab at him, like Benitez did last year, they'll just say things like he can only be available for half the games played in a season. As his relationship with Zinedine Zidane and his overall state at the club continued to deteriorate, he started attracting negative media attention, with one being the middle finger incident when he once appeared to stick his middle finger at some journalists who were waiting outside the Colombian national team's hotel. This was not a good look considering he was an idol and a role model to millions of children back in Colombia, and this led to the playmaker getting so many criticism from journalists who branded him as a spoiled boy. James is a spoiled little boy. He didn't want to be a footballer or to succeed. Unfortunately, he thought he was the main figure, but at Real Madrid, that was Cristiano Ronaldo. He stopped being a footballer and began to be a figurine. He was never a professional because he thought he owned the team. He fought with Benitez, he fought with Ranieri at Monaco. He doesn't like anyone. It's because of him. Don't blame the coaches. It's not Zidane's fault. The club told him that he has to have the player, but he caught him several times speaking badly. If Queiroz has removed James from the Colombian team, it's because he can't stand him speaking ill of him. James, fed up with his lack of game time, decided the time was right for a change of scenery. Bayern Munich, managed by his first Real Madrid boss Carlo Ancelotti, took on the responsibility of attempting to revive his career and reminding the whole world exactly what he was capable of. We're delighted we've been able to complete this transfer. Signing James Rodriguez was our coach Carlo Ancelotti's biggest wish following their successful spell working together in Madrid. James is a very versatile player. He's a goal scorer himself. He sets up a lot of goals, and on top of that, he's great from set pieces. There's no question that this transfer further increases the quality in our team.
Tengo absolutamente nada. Yo creo que no son sentimientos de rabia. Creo que no tengo nada. Ni contra el club tampoco, son sentimientos de gratitud.
James had a decent 2017-18 season at Bayern. Despite losing Carlo Ancelotti very early on, he helped the club to yet another Bundesliga title and a semi-final finish in the Champions League, as they only got eliminated by his parent club Real Madrid, a fixture in which he put his name on the score sheet on his return to the Bernabeu. His second season, however, was not as fruitful. Former Eintracht Frankfurt manager Niko Kovac was appointed as the new manager ahead of that season, and this will spell the end for James Rodriguez. He was constantly battling fitness issues, while at the same time it was now getting clear that the manager didn't fancy him, as he started seeing himself on the bench more often. Just like with his previous managers in the past like Rafael Benitez, James lost his cool once again and said this to Kovac: "We are not at Frankfurt here," as a way to vent out his frustrations. When his loan expired, according to the club, he decided he wanted to go back to Real Madrid as opposed to extending his time there. But it was actually reported that the decision from the Bayern perspective was quite split, as the likes of club chairman Karl-Heinz Rummenigge wanted the Colombian to stay, but the club president Uli Hoeneß preferred the opposite, as he reportedly said, "We won't pay 40 million euros for someone who won't play." He soon went back to Real Madrid hoping for a fresh start, but unfortunately the same old story. Fitness issues, tactical issues, benched, repeat. It just wasn't working out.
James will always know that the manager doesn't fancy him, and that's a major problem for a footballer. When you know the manager is behind you and he's going to back you and he likes you as a player, it makes you feel confident when you go on the field. Even when you make a mistake, you know the manager's behind you. Zidane has made it quite clear over a period of time that he doesn't really want James Rodriguez at the club, and he hasn't been able to get rid of him, so he's back in the team. And that's a major problem. So he'll never feel fully happy. He'll never feel fully confident. He knows the minute he has a bad game that he might be out the side.
In 2020, James decided to follow Ancelotti, this time to mid-table team Everton. He had a great start there, but unfortunately, injuries derailed his momentum. Also, the Colombian national team increasingly began to become less reliant on him. This was mostly due to the fact that himself and Colombian boss at the time, Carlos Queiroz, had some issues which ultimately led to both men not seeing eye to eye. With the frustrations boiling up inside of James, it eventually surfaced when during their embarrassing 6-1 loss to Ecuador, reports surfaced that James got into a fight with one of his teammates, Jefferson Lerma, an incident the former Monaco man at Colombia's Football Federation were quick to deny. He was dropped for the 2021 Copa America by his manager, and James had to watch from home as now Liverpool star man Luis Diaz ran the show throughout the tournament. In the summer of 2021, when Ancelotti left Everton to go back to coach Real Madrid, James found himself at the mercy of Rafael Benitez, who became the club's new manager. James, as you would imagine, did not want to stay. After several speculations on where he was going to end up, he soon found himself signing for a club in Qatar before he eventually left to sign for Greek club Olympiacos along with his former Real Madrid teammate Marcelo, where he currently plays till this day.